President Trump has sent National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., taking control of the city's police force, a dramatic move, as he calls Liberation Day, vowing to restore law and order to the nation's capital. It's an unprecedented step. For more, let's head to Chicago now. We're joined by Oz Sultan from Sultan Interactive Group. Great to see you. What's triggered President Trump's decision to take control of D.C.'s police force here?
So it's a couple of things. You know, you've had some violent incidents where people have been tourists, citizens have been beaten to death by local gangs, but it becomes a more complicated, layered, nuanced problem over the course of time. You have teenagers where programs have been removed consistently across the summers for the past several years by the local DC Democratic establishment. At the same point in time, there are curfews and curfew zones that have been put in place. So, you know, it's a challenge because when you don't have outlets for kids, specifically black kids within the DC ecosystem, the Baltimore ecosystem, and, you know, your consistent push is to say, hey, you can't go out, hey, you can't do this, you start building heat. And at the same point in time, when you start taking away resources and opportunities for them to do things, it creates more problems. So I think this is a good stopgap. DC police haven't been very effective in, you know, what they've been trying to do, especially for the past couple of years. But the big question is, you know, after this short-term jump and getting things squared away, what's next?
Let's have a listen just quickly now to President Trump and Pete Hegseth.
We're going to have National Guard, but Pete Hegseth will tell you about it. We will bring in the military if needed. People say, oh, that's so terrible. He's going to bring in, it's been used many times over the years. I don't think we'll need it. I think we've got so many great people, including the people that are in the police department with proper leadership.
At your direction this morning, we've mobilized the DC National Guard. It'll be operationalized by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, through the DC Guard. You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week.
So how unusual, Oz, is it for a president to federalize a local police department?
You know, I mean, you really have to think back to, you know, the Vietnam War, the initial war in Kuwait, and then really a couple of things that happened in the OOs to have any kind of precedent for this. What's going on in Los Angeles obviously promulgated National Guard response. But, you know, that was rioting and turning cars over and burning businesses and having a redux of, you know, Korean shopkeepers shooting back at gangs and things. This is more of an issue, I think, of a policy problem where you've got young black and brown kids and you don't have anything for them to do. And then at the same point in time, you don't have effective policing inside of the DC metro area. So, you know, this is a good first step, but the longer term of this is we need really great policy that helps our black communities, because otherwise this is, you know, just a little bit of lipstick on the pig.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you're literally at O'Hare Airport there in Chicago on your way back from Baghdad. When I think of Baghdad, I feel like the National Guard being needed in the city. I don't expect that from Washington, D.C.
You know, it's a big step response, just showing the city and the city leadership that, look, DC hasn't taken the appropriate steps. You know, we've got the 250th anniversary coming up next year. We've got the World Cup coming up next year. We're going to have games and events pretty much up and down the East Coast corridor. And when DC is showing, just from a lack of leadership perspective, that the streets aren't safe, obviously something needs to be done. So this is a logical step from the White House. The bigger problem is going to be longer term. You know, you can't just keep the expense of the military in Washington, D.C., and there really needs to be substantive policy for our black communities that solves these problems more from a head-on perspective. But I just don't see it from Democratic leadership in D.C., and I just don't see an interest, which is a huge problem.
Just quickly, we don't have much time left. What will the National Guard do that police can't?
The National Guard can do a couple of things. I mean, you're mentioning I just came back from Baghdad. They'll establish checkpoints, which are military checkpoints with Humvees. They will have guard zones set up so, you know, people feel a little bit more safe. And the closest thing we have to this is Fort Worth, Texas, which operates its own private security, private military.
Right. Yeah.
But I will tell you that you may end up, with pieces of it looking like Baghdad, not to the extent that we've got private security rolling people around and weapons checks at buildings or hotels
Yeah.
and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But there's a bit more security, a bit more guardianship, and probably serious conversations with Washington D.C. police as well as leadership about what the hell they're going to do next.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time as always. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Speak soon. Bye.